So today we're changing out the solenoid pack on a 68 RFE on a 2011 Dodge 3500. It's a pretty common procedure. Usually it's P0750 low reverse clutch solenoid has gone bad in the solenoid pack, and we'll do an initial inspection of the pan first, and then we'll make it a determination. If the transmission is intact and is alright, then we'll go ahead and replace the solenoid pack. So the first step is remove these bolts, and what I like to do is I'll remove all the bolts except for about 4 of them in the corners, and that way I can release lower this one. I usually drain the fluid out from the rear on the driver's side, but this pan is held in place with silicone. So what I'll do is I'll use a tool like this, and I'll wedge it right up in here, in this area here, and I'll pry the pan loose, and I'll slide it down the pan rail until it breaks free, the silicone breaks free, and I'll drain the pan. And what we'll typically do is we'll save the fluid just in case there is a problem and the customer declines repairs, and we can put the fluid back in if he doesn't want to go any further. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Like I said, I have the tool wedged up in the pan here, break the silicone seal loose, and now we have it draining. And like I said, we're going to save the fluid in case there's ever a problem, and we can, and the customer wants to decline a repair, we can put the fluid back into it. This fluid looks pretty good. Another thing that's important is before you can pull the solenoid pack, you have to pull this pass-through connector out. It goes through into the case, and the solenoid pack is in this area here. On this one, the lever is broken off the connector, which we'll want to probably recommend to the customer that he'll put a new pigtail connector on it. So this one's pretty simple. We'll just lift it up off of there. But you have to do this because actually when you're pulling the valve body down, it helps to be able to push down on this connector here to aid in removing the valve body. So here is the pan off the 68 RFE. It looks pretty clean. It's pretty typical residue that we find on these Dodges. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with the procedure of changing out the solenoid pack on this vehicle. I've got the pan off, and I'm getting ready to remove the valve body. And I just wanted to point out real quick that this fastener right here for this filter, it takes a T25 Torx to remove it. And so, in these 68 RFEs, these Dodges, they have 2 filters in the pan. They have this one, and then they have a spin-on right here. And typically, we'll replace both of them during the procedure of replacing the solenoid pack. So once I remove this filter, I'll go step by step in the bolts that hold the valve body on, and show you my procedure with that. So holding up the valve body in a Dodge 68 RFE are 6 bolts. And there, you can see there are many bolts in this thing, but these are all Torx head fasteners that are used to hold the 2 halves of the valve body together, as well as secure the solenoid pack to the valve body. But to actually remove the valve body, it has 8mm hex head bolts, and there's one located right here, and there's one right here. There's another directly across from it right here, and then there's 3 on the end, here, here, and here. Now, take note, there's an open hole right here. So if you have removed this valve body and then you're going back together and you see this hole, don't worry, you haven't left anything out. That's how it comes from the manufacturer. Now, as you can see, it is draining. So what I'll do is I'll loosen all 6 of those bolts and let the valve body finish draining out before I actually remove it, to avoid the frustration of just having fluid pouring all over me. So as you can see, I've removed the valve body, and it just has this open cavity. And pretty much all the fluid transfer between the valve body and the clutch packs, the transmission, and the pump, it all pretty much occurs right here. There is a port here for other applications, and right here. But it's a very simple design. As you can see right here, that's where the pass-through connector came through. This here is the manual lever to remove the manual valve, and if you just pull it off leaving it in a park, you really don't have to make any adjustments. You just change out the solenoid pack, bolt it to the valve body, and it lines right back up. Now what I'll do is, once I get the valve body, and I'll explain this when I get in there, I'll jiggle the manual valve the manual lever from the outside and make sure I have movement on the solenoid pack, just to make sure I have it installed. Something else I wanted to make note of, when I remove these, I'll typically take my mounting bolts, and I usually like to just lay out a clean rag. This is the bolt that held the filter on, and then these are the 6 bolts that held the valve body on. And it just to keep it nice and neat and organized, so you know what you're doing, you know what you got to, where everything's at. And here is the top side of that valve body. This here is the actual solenoid pack that we're going to change out. And I typically, what I'll do is I'll drain all the fluid into one pan and save it. Like I said, in this case it's not necessary because there wasn't a problem found. And then I'll use a separate pan to just deal with my valve body by itself, so I'll ensure myself that I have a clean surface to work on. And so what we'll do is we'll remove these bolts from the underside, and as you can see here, also I'll point out, you basically have a line of bolts that go here and down this way. And all these bolts here are what secure the solenoid pack to the valve body, and that's what I'm going to remove right now. And they all take the same T25 Torx. And we'll just take them all loose like that. So this is our new solenoid pack. They ship from the factory. They're double bagged. As you can see, there's 2 Ziploc bags here. And here at Troy's Transmission, we like to use factory original parts simply to, if anything else, we believe that the factory parts are the best parts. Whether there's an aftermarket version of this available, I do not know. However, at Troy's, we only use factory original OEM parts simply to reduce our liability. They typically have a better warranty, and they're typically of better quality. As you can see over here, these are the bolts that held the solenoid pack to the valve body. There's 15 of them, and if you look over here, it's a nice little notch that solenoid pack fits in, and I want you to see the underside of this so you can kind of recognize the pattern. If you'll see there, it's just a rectangular section where the 15 bolts go to secure the solenoid pack to the valve body. And now I'm going to install the new solenoid pack. So as you can see, I have the valve body reinstalled with the new solenoid pack in place. I'm going to reconnect this for testing purposes until we find out if the customer wants to replace this harness in connector. But what I want to point out at this point is I've taken this loose off the manual lever, and I want you to see up inside there that electronic component right there, right above the valve body. And that's what you want to kind of see move whenever you move the manual lever. That way you know you have it fully installed. See, it moves with the manual lever, so I know I've got it in place. It's not that it would be likely to not have it in the right place, but you just want to make sure. And again, here is that empty hole. There's not a bolt that goes there, so whenever you're putting this back together, you haven't forgotten anything. You know, there's only 6 bolts that hold the valve body to the transmission case. Here's the pan off the 68 RFE. I've cleaned the silicone off of it. As you can see, it has these little ribs in there, and it kind of helps hold the silicone secured to the pan rail on the case of the transmission for a more effective seal. It's critical to get all the silicone out of it, and you really need to use a wire wheel or something like that. Also, don't forget to put your magnet in here to catch any kind of metallic debris that may, separate from the transmission during its life, and it doesn't get hung up in the valve body or that sort of thing and cycle through the pump. But what we like to do here at Troy's is typically after we clean it off, we'll take brake clean here, and we'll spray a little bit on a rag here, like right here on the corner. And we'll take not to be wasteful, and then we'll take it and we'll just run it along the pan rail, and we'll clean that off in order to remove any oily residue, so that the silicone that we use will have a more effective seal. Now, some pans take a gasket, others take silicone. Dodges usually take silicone, and we, again, here at Troy's, we like to use factory stuff, and this is a really good silicone. We really haven't had any problem with it leaking or anything like that. The big mistake a lot of people make is that they'll use both. They'll try to use a gasket and silicone, which is a big mistake, because all that will happen is that neither one will effectively seal. So stick to the factory recommendation, and as we do here at Troy's, and we'll use factory recommended OEM parts and supplies. So I've applied the silicone to the pan. And what I like to do to ensure an even coating is I'll put a fine bead around it and I'll spread it around with my finger. And then whenever I put it up, I like to look for a nice bead to kind of squish through a little bit between the transmission pan and the case. And that's how we like to do it here. So I have the pan reinstalled, and as you can see, there's a fine bead of silicone that goes all the way around. When you get underneath a brand new Dodge, you'll see that they have basically the same thing, a bead of silicone that protrudes around the pan. And we like to do it like this, try to, with a degree of neatness, it has just a feel of professionalism when you have a nice clean bead all the way around. And we haven't had much problems with these at all. The factory silicone seals very well, and it's some good stuff to use. So let's let this vehicle down, put the fluid in it, and I'll show you a procedure that we have to do to finalize it, and we'll take it on test drive and make sure it's fixed. Final step, after replacing the solenoid pack here at Troy's, we'll do what's called a quick learn. And what this does, it just sets all the solenoids at the proper positions according to the clutch volume index of the new transmission. And now the transmission will do a reset on its own as you drive it, but this is just a more expedient way to get it in position to be able to drive it and see if we can't duplicate the problem, or just to ensure that the repair is good. And so, as you can see, I had this snap-on scanner, and it says this function will initiate the quick learn procedure. So I'm going to go ahead and put continue. Engine must be running, the brake pedal must be pressed, and the park brake set during the entire procedure. And it will not run the test if codes are present. So I'm going to start the vehicle. Put my foot on the brake, press continue. Move shift lever to overdrive. Move shift lever to neutral. And there it goes. Shift into overdrive. And there it is, quick learn procedure complete. So now I'll just exit out of the scanner and I'll go verify my fluid level. Another successful repair on a late model Dodge, replacing the solenoid pack. After going through extensive testing of the PCM and the wiring harness, we've concluded that time and time again the P0750 will ultimately be a failure within the solenoid pack, and this is just yet another example of that case. It was a successful repair.